Welcome, everyone. Let's get into it. Today, we're diving deep into arguments from a recent piece by Douglas Macgregor, who warns that America's approach to defense is seriously outdated and wasteful.
Yep, I caught that. He really lays out that our current military structure, with, too many generals and bloated headquarters, is a major problem, right?
Exactly. And he points out that while our combat troops are being cut down, the money's just lining up for administrative bloat. It's like, we're investing in
indeed.
appearances over actual capability.
Right, and what really caught my attention was his claim that the unipolar era is over. He says competition is now more economic than military, which really shifts the narrative on national security.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. In his view, America's arrogance, refusing to acknowledge other nations' security interests, is actually undermining its credibility on the world stage.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
like we're too busy playing the bully while ignoring our own internal weaknesses.
Speaking of internal issues, he really doesn't hold back on criticizing the domestic state of affairs in America, mentioning poor education, declining industry, and political corruption. How do you think these factors tie into his overall argument?
Well, it all connects to the idea that America's soft power is decaying from within. When a country has a fragile economy and dysfunctional politics, its military posturing becomes even more hollow.
That's true.
It's almost like insisting on war readiness without the foundational strength to back it up.
Right. And he even argues that if war must ever be waged, it should truly be a last resort. That's a pretty sober stance, considering how often military might is flexed before diplomacy is genuinely attempted.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he actually criticizes what might be seen as a reckless approach. I mean, our defense plans that prioritize regime change or military interventions over, genuine economic or cooperative solutions.
Yep, exactly. I sort of wonder if he might be oversimplifying things, though. Some might argue that having a robust, even if expansive military command structure is necessary for deterrence. What do you think about that challenge?
That's a fair point, but McGregor seems to contend that the current setup doesn't ensure effective deterrence. It's more about projecting power without real capability. It's like
right.
you've got a flashy sports car that's low on horsepower. It just can't perform when it matters most.
Exactly. And he brings it back to the fact that if our military is focused on quantity, too many generals and excess bureaucracy, then we're neglecting quality, like real combat readiness.
Yeah, and he warns that funding these inefficient structures is not only a waste, but might actually leave the nation vulnerable if a true crisis hits.
Absolutely,
Imagine
yeah.
trying to build a fortress on a shaky foundation.
It really isn't just about military spending either. It's about a shift in priorities. When your educational system and industrial base are failing, how can you expect your defense apparatus to shine?
Totally. And he stresses that Washington's refusal to see or maybe admit that other nations have valid security interests is further eroding trust globally.
That really undercuts our moral stance. And, there's that whole idea of economic competition being the new arena. Instead of constantly gearing up for military conquest, we should focus on boosting economic resilience.
Right. He's suggesting that economic competition, like trade wars and emerging markets, is where the real battles are now fought, and that investing in domestic strength should be our priority.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
like shifting from brute force to smart strategy.
Yet, here's where I get a bit skeptical. How do we manage the balance between maintaining a strong deterrent and reshaping our military into something more modern? Won't cutting back on traditional military structures leave us exposed in the short term?
That's the real balancing act, isn't it? McGregor argues for necessary reforms, cutting waste, streamlining command, and investing where it truly matters, rather than slashing defense entirely.
True. Restructuring doesn't mean abandoning defense completely. It's more about realigning resources with the challenges of a multipolar world, like enhancing technology and economic capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. And he calls for humility in foreign policy. Instead of the old grandiose interventionist mindset, Washington should adopt a more pragmatic, cooperative approach that respects other nations' interests.
That's a refreshing take. Did you notice too how he criticizes the obsession with regime change? He seems to suggest that meddling in other countries' affairs, without considering the long-term consequences, only fuels instability.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by drowning the house in water, misguided and ultimately destructive.
Yeah, that analogy hits hard. I also heard him mention that rebuilding trust globally is crucial. If the US stops acting like it's the only global authority and starts addressing, say, fair economic practices, it might restore credibility.
Exactly, it's all connected. A more honest approach on security, economic cooperation, and internal reform could help bridge the trust gap with other nations.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, he's essentially saying war should always be the absolutely last option. Given the costs, both human and economic, that war imposes, that stance seems like a call for real, thoughtful diplomacy.
Yes, making war a true last resort is a call for the kind of restraint we rarely see in modern policy debates. It's as if he's saying we need to get our priorities straight, both at home and abroad.
Yeah, I totally agree. On another note, his critique of the excessive number of high ranking officers and redundant command centers really highlights systemic inefficiencies. Do you think his recommendations for streamlining are practical?
That's a tough one, but his argument seems grounded in fiscal responsibility and the need for agility in defense. It's like trimming the fat to move faster and respond better when needed.
That makes sense. Sure, but some might argue that such drastic cuts could compromise strategic leadership. I mean, isn't there a risk in overhauling a long-standing system too quickly?
That's a reasonable concern, but Macgregor's point is more about recalibration than a complete overhaul. He's really saying, let's invest smarter, not just cut blindly. A kind of tough love for defense reform.
Yep, exactly. Right, and looking at today's multipolar environment, with rising economic powers and shifting alliances, his call for reform seems even more prescient.
Absolutely. If we continue to operate on outdated assumptions, it'll essentially be like fighting yesterday's battle with today's weapons.
That's so true. So, in a nutshell, Macgregor is urging the US to rethink its strategies, cutting waste, boosting internal strengths, and really making war the last option rather than the default.
Exactly, and that message carries significant implications for both foreign and domestic policy. It's a call to, bring a much needed dose of humility and realism back to national security strategy.
Yeah, I think that's a message worth considering in today's world. This kind of dialogue, balancing military might with economic and internal strength, is really the need of the hour. It challenges us to question if our current path aligns with a sustainable, secure future.
Yep, and while there's clear pushback from traditionalists who believe in a more aggressive stance, his emphasis on reform, humility, and pragmatic economic cooperation offers a fresher, more thoughtful roadmap.
Absolutely right. In the end, whether one agrees entirely or not, this perspective forces a critical reassessment of what true security means in the modern age. A balance between military prowess, economic strength, and internal resilience.
Well said. And as we wrap up, remember, it's not about abandoning defense entirely, but evolving it to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow, with war, truly, as the very last resort.
Yep, indeed.